Welcome to Introduction to Cyber Forensics. We'll be taking a look specifically at Wireshark in a sandbox lab. And in review of this Wireshark program, specifically this is used for cyber forensics and packet analysis. We will discover its use in terms of brute force attacks, identifying failed logon attempts. In this particular lab, they won't use a brute force attack, but it's the same type of scenario with a failed logon attempt. We're going to review how packet analysis can help us with file deletions, suspicious activity, rebuilding a history of activity, even possibly capturing information that was transferred or viewed over the network by an attacker in order to rebuild or build a case for investigation and prosecution, including IP address, MAC information, computer names, and all of that will be located and found within this particular lab. So let's get started. The attacker wants to do some investigation prior to launching his script. A couple of things he wants to know. What is the current domain controller? Because he knows that the script is going to add an account to the domain controller. He may also want to know the file server direct IP address. So in order to do that, most likely the attacker will utilize some of the following functions. Going to start run, typing CMD, bringing up a DOS prompt. At this point, he can find out a little bit more about his own machine by typing ipconfig/all. And instantly he can see both the DNS server information as well as the default gateway. So now he'd like to know what the server possibly is, the name of the server for 192.168.0.1. In order to do that, he can trace route, which forces the DNS to resolve the IP to computer name. Whether or not it allows for the trace route to complete, what's still going to happen is the DNS server is going to go ahead and resolve the IP address to the computer name. And at this point, he has what he needs. He can click Control-C. And here you can see we have PyCon-DC with an IP address of 192.168.0.1. He also wants to find more information out about the file server. He knows the name of the server because of some mappings on his system. So he's going to go ahead and do a ping against the computer name or the file server name. And he has what he needs. He can click Control-C again. So now you can see the PyCon-file server with its full path information here, pycon-fs.pycon.ist.com, has been resolved to the following IP address of 192.168.0.11. The attacker would now like to know that they can access the file server directly by IP. The first thing they want to do is to see if they can actually ping the file server by its IP address. They already have this information from the previous step, so they will proceed with typing ping 192.168, adding a -T for continuous ping. At this point, the attacker has what he needs. He can access the information, or he can visibly see the file server by computer name. He can also visibly see the file server by IP address, which will be helpful as he attempts to gain access later on. We'll now turn our attention over to Wireshark to see what's visibly seen and what packets are being captured from the IT standpoint. The IT person, in general review each day of packet analyzing, opens up the Wireshark program, proceeds to capture, selects interfaces. Only one local interface is currently listed, and clicks Start. If not, he selects the appropriate interface. In this case, it's already selected, and starts the program. After a few seconds of watching this, you can see some broadcast traffic, and now, while he's watching this, the attacker decides to launch their ping attack. You can see the information instantly showing up from the attacker's machine, attempting to ping constantly the file server, in this case what looks like 192.168.0.11, and a response back
to 192.168.0.20. What's important at this point for the IT personnel reviewing this information is to be able to quickly filter out content. The packet analysis is going to keep coming in, and one can collect thousands of code pretty quickly, thousands of lines of code. You can see here the line numbers to the left-hand side. In order to filter this information out, now I don't mean limit what's being captured, but actually what's being displayed. He knows that 192.168.0.11 is in fact the file server, and this is the IP address in question. He can click or right-click right on the IP address, select Apply as Filter, and do Selected. And you'll notice here that the source information and the destination, you can see the communications now that are flowing from the source to the destination. Now, what's really helpful is he can go in here and grab some additional information by double-clicking on that individual line. What would be helpful to know at this point would be the MAC address of this source machine. You'll notice here we have the MAC address ending in 6C:CD. This is the MAC address. Now, why is this important? We'll talk about that later on. But right now we have additional information. We have an IP address of 192.168.0.11. We got a MAC address. Both of those pieces of information will come in handy later on. But more importantly, he now has on his radar for review. We are currently now looking at the PyCon domain controller. We're going to look at the before and after view of domain objects prior to the bad guy launching the script and after. So right now we'll get an understanding of what it would look like before he runs the script. We'll go to Start, All Programs, Administrative Tools, and Active Directory Users and Computers. And you can see here under the Users OU folder, there is no current bad guy listed here. You can also go into the domain admins under members and see there is again no bad guy account listed. You're now looking at the attacker system. We're going to go ahead and launch the bad guy's script. Double click the bad guy's script. Let's enter a salary of 55,000. Select here and type in 55,000 and click enter. Gives you a bogus raise calculation. Click enter again in order to launch the actual AT creation. Now that's it from the bad guy's computer. Let's watch what happens behind the scenes. At this time, the attacker did go ahead and launch their script. If we were to open up the Start, All Programs, Administrative Tools, and go to Active Directory Users and Computers, you can see automatically now we do have a bad guy. The type is a user, and the description is bad guy domain admin account. Well, that's just a description. Let's go into the domain admin group, check on the members. Yep, and there you can see it again. We have the bad guy domain account, who is a member of domain users and also a member of domain admins. At this time, the bad guy can now establish rights for themselves and access files and folders in directories that they wouldn't normally have access to, which is the particular goal of this employee. Okay, we are back on the attacker's machine, and we're going to do a couple of tests here just to show you. Currently, the attacker cannot access the information that they need, but we're going to show you that. Prior, the attacker had already pinged the file server to obtain its IP address. So at this point, he could go to Start Run, type in / the IP address of the PyCon-FS server. And you can see here he does not have authorization. He did attempt to, he did already launch the script, so he does have a domain admin account, but he's not logged onto his local machine as a domain admin account. He's logged on locally to the machine. So he's going to attempt to put in some credentials here. To see if he can gain access. And he's got an incorrect account. He's going to try it again. Then he realizes that the domain is already listed below. He doesn't have to enter domain information, so he's going to go ahead and put bad guy in the password that should have been added to the domain. Oh, and there he goes. Now he has access to the PyCon-file server share, and this is what he wants to gain access to. At this point, he's going to open up the PyCon file server. He sees a folder called clients, and there is some information that he is wanting. This is the client list that he's interested in. He's going to copy that and paste that locally to his system. Next thing he's going to do is delete the client list off the server. Now, while this is happening, if you recall, the IT person already identified some strange activity from this machine and this particular user and has been capturing packets behind the scenes while he has been proceeding with this type of activity. We'll turn over to the IT machine and see what kind of packets are shown there. So we can see here that this current session, the attacker machine is currently logged on locally using a PyCon account. We can see that information here and here as well. But then we can see that he attempts to log on to access information using this particular authorization from the domain and bad guy. We can continue to see again here. And then we see that he successfully logs on with the PyCon domain as bad guy and creates a tree connect request here and has successfully accessed this device, this file server 192.168.0.11, and identifying a share that's been established on that server. And again, he's made a connection to that server. We can look a little further down to see exactly what he's connecting to. He connected to the pycon-fs directory. Scrolling further through Wireshark, we see on line 564 that he's trying to get to the client's folder. And scroll even further down on line 655, we see that he's actually getting into or trying to access the client list.xls.txt file. Just a brief discussion on SMB2. Just wanted to show you here in terms of file deletion, and then we're going to show you and see this actually in the Wireshark program. When Vista and Beyond deletes a file, it'll open the file with the SMB2 create. It'll then use the set file disposition to 1, which means, and then finally close the file. Since the disposition is set to delete on close, the file or directory will be deleted. Now, the IT person has been alerted to the individual. They've been alerted already that they're accessing. They've incorrectly attempted to log on to a directory. They then attempted to log on to the directory with a bad guy user account, which is unfamiliar to the IT person. So they're really interested now in paying close attention to what happens to the client's directory and in particular the client list. He can filter the information further by typing in SMB2. At this point, it's going to narrow the protocol, or the window will be filtered, again, based upon the filter criteria, the protocol, this server message block criteria. And he can look through here and see we have information of accessing files. He can continue down here looking for any suggestion that there may be inappropriate activity related to this client, particular client file. And what he notices here is that he sees the client list.xls, but then he no longer sees the information. Now, he could go out and confirm that it's no longer there. But what's interesting is he notices, or he's familiar with the SMB2 delete process, where it creates a request, establishes the info request, setting the delete on close option, and then closes the file. So if we looked in here, expanded this down and looked to the server message block, let me actually close all of this for you. This is what it would look like all closed. We're going to open the server message block protocol, scroll to the bottom, and the SMB2 file disposition info has been set to 1 with a delete on close. Now, what particular file are we referencing? You can see that here, the client list.xls. Now, what's real important while he's in here, who set this file disposition info to 1? He could scroll back up to look at the Ethernet section, and there it is, the attacker's MAC address of their system. Again, it's important to capture that, not just the IP address. He can then close this and view. So they opened it, they sent a delete request, it changed to delete on close, and then they closed the file. And of course, the file was subsequently deleted. So at this point, we know that there's an attacker machine. We have the MAC address. We know that they incorrectly attempt to access the file server using incorrect credentials. Then they successfully access the file server using a bad guy account. The IT administrator would know that particular account isn't active, so he can investigate later on how that actually happened. But what he knows now is that this bad guy account from that MAC address accessed this particular file. Now, one thing I didn't do was to go in here and pay a little bit more closer attention to the information. Now, what's important to know, we've identified that the server message block file disposition info was set to 1 to delete on close. We've identified already that the MAC address of the individual, but we can also go in here and confirm, what's the current system, the computer name that's been assigned to that MAC address or the host. You can see that information here. Here's the desktop, here's a domain, here's the account that he actually logged into. Here's the IP address, again, of the target destination of where he was trying to get to. So we have a lot of information right here in this one item under Wireshark. There's two more pieces of information I want to identify before we close out this lab. The first of which is, let's assume for a moment that this particular company did not have an appropriate backup procedure and they needed to get that information back that transferred. So this particular attacker accessed a folder structure, deleted a file, copied it to his local desktop, and let's just assume that there is no backup and we need to get that information back. Can Wireshark be of help to us? Is there any additional information, any other packets that we can gather? This is a little bit more complex, but I want to just show you the Wireshark capability at this point. We have a TCP communication. We have TCP communication following the server message block. And so what I'm going to do is just to right-click on this and follow TCP stream. If I scroll down through this, notice the desktop is listed here, the domain. We can continue scrolling through. Here's the PyCon-FS directory. Here's the location, the file server. The folder structure can be seen here. There's the accounting directory, clients directory. We have human resources, marketing, payroll, lots of information. If we scrolled further through this particular raw data file, notice that here's the clients.xls.txt file. And what do you see here? You actually see the information within that actual file. Now, there are no email addresses or phone numbers. This is the extent of information that existed in that text file. But what you can see here, without actually having the file, just from Wireshark, we can obtain the file that was accessed, attain the directory, follow the TCP stream to see which system accessed it from where, and we can actually rebuild this particular file. We could actually save this information out and rebuild the original file simply utilizing Wireshark. Now, what's really important for this IT person to know and for you to understand is if this Wireshark program is closed without saving the data, all of this investigation and all of the investigative information that he uncovered or she uncovered would be lost. If you save the information, it can then be used for later analysis. To do that, they simply can go File, Save As, we're going to call it Test, Analysis, PCA-PNG, and we can save that to the desktop. Now at this time, this information, you can see the file name here, can
can then be transferred to someone else for review, and all of the packet information that we uncovered during the lab could be reviewed by somebody else as well. Extremely important to save the analysis for investigation.